questions. But I did ask you to all come to class today with an idea of what philosophy is. So I would like everyone to take 2 minutes to type into the chat what you think philosophy is based on what you've seen in the course so far, or if you're new to the class and you haven't had a chance to even take a look, surely you've heard the word philosophy before. What do you think it means? Wonderful. So what I love is you guys are not only capturing the general notion of what philosophy is, which honestly, you couldn't get 2 philosophers to agree on an official definition. So we'll talk about a couple different ways we can understand it. But you're also capturing the broad range of things that philosophy is concerned with, right? I mean, there literally is almost a philosophy of everything nowadays. There's philosophy of sport, philosophy of science, philosophy of humor, right? We're going to be doing philosophy of race. There's so many amazing things that philosophy is applicable to, right? And so, Abigail, you sent your response just to me, but I think it's a good contribution. Is the study of values, reason, and existence, right? So this is getting at some of the other things. A lot of you are touching upon the study of knowledge and belief. Love that. That is a specific area of philosophy that happens to be my area of expertise, and that is called epistemology. So that is specifically the study of knowledge. And that is one of 3 main subdisciplines of philosophy. So philosophy can be categorized and understood in lots of different ways. But one way that tends to be helpful is to break it up into the types of questions that are being asked, right? And so in general, philosophy has historically been split up into 4 main categories, or again, subdisciplines. One of them is logic, right? Which is the study of argumentation, right? Definitely things like language. Savannah, yes, excellent. So that's what we're going to be talking about on Thursday. And we're going to see through the writing assignment that we do in our class. You're actually going to be constructing your own deductively valid argument, right? So you're going to be using the tools of logic to try to compel people to agree with you, right? Using not just reasons, but good reasons, right? Good reasons for thinking that something is the case. So we have that study of argumentation, the semantics involved with language and the syntax, right? All of that is going to play into that. And so logic can really show up anywhere, right? But if it's in that specific form of assessing argumentation or form, right, then it counts as logic. The other 3 areas, again, really big umbrellas, and they can overlap. One of them is epistemology. I mentioned the study of knowledge and also justified true belief. The other 2 are metaphysics and axiology. Has anyone heard of either of these words before?
Yeah, in one of the readings it talked about metaphysics and the second one. And yeah.
What do you remember about it?
Metaphysics is a study of nature and cosmology and astrology, or I don't, how do you
So close. You're so close.
Not that word.
Yeah, no, good. So metaphysics is the study of the nature of reality. So physics, right? We're very familiar with that. We consider it like a hard science. Meta just means beyond, right? So metaphysics is just beyond the physics. So metaphysics is studying the nature of reality in any way that goes beyond empirical testing, right? So quantum physics is basically metaphysics, right? But with a lot of math and theorems, right? Because there are so many different theories and views that we can't yet test empirically, right? Some of that is changing as technology progresses, but so that's really interesting. But metaphysics, beyond the physics, but really the study of the nature of reality. And when you said cosmetology, I think you meant cosmology, which is one of the 2 main subdisciplines of metaphysics. So metaphysics, again, study of the nature of reality. And it can be broken up into cosmology, which is the study of the origins of the universe, or the more common one in philosophy is ontology, the study of the way things are currently. And cosmology can also involve things that how things might end, right? But that is actually another word. Eschatology is how the universe will end, right? But so metaphysics, what exists and what it is like at its beginning, as it is now, and as it will be in the future, right? And all through those processes of change. So metaphysics, again, as you can see, is a huge subdiscipline, right? I'm sure metaphysicians will argue that everything is metaphysics, right? And epistemologists are going to argue everything is epistemology, right? But it's just a different way of classifying the types of questions that we're going to be asking, right? So different ways of clarifying them so that we can get at what the intended answer or satisfying goal might be. Any ideas what axiology is?
Can you say it again?
Axiology, the second word so right under metaphysics, axiology. Excellent, Savannah. Yes, axiology is the study of values. And so axiology, like metaphysics, can be broken up into different subcategories. The biggest ones under axiology are aesthetics, right? So these are values of beauty and love and art, right? Basically anything that is a non-moral value judgment.
Does axos mean worthy?
Excellent question. I would have to go to the Greek, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like that.
Okay.
Yes, worthy, deserving, or suitable. Very good. Very good. And the other type of value judgments that we study in axiology are the moral kind. And so this area we call ethics. Okay, so these are going to be our theories about how to make moral value judgments, or in some cases, how to judge individuals as morally praiseworthy or not. Okay, so we have metaphysics with cosmology and ontology. We have aesthetics with ethics we have axiology with aesthetics and ethics. And then we have epistemology, which is going to have a bunch of different areas that it taps into. It doesn't have two nice subcategories like that. I wish it did. But yeah, so I think that covers the four main areas of philosophy. So any questions about any of these categories so far? Or we can talk about philosophical questions. Oh, the silent black boxes. Ah. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is the value of asking these kinds of questions, right? So in a lot of cases, what you're going to see, and like Bertrand Russell talks about in one of our first readings, The Value of Philosophy, right here by Bertrand Russell. The idea here, right, is that philosophy is going to be valuable not because of the answers to the questions. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but because of the questions themselves. So whether or not someone has done the reading yet, so maybe you know Russell's answer, but maybe you can even guess for yourself if you haven't read Russell yet. Why might the questions themselves be more important than the answers in philosophy? What do we think? Why is it important to ask what makes someone a good person? Is there a God? What is real? Why is it worthwhile to ask those questions, even if we can't find an answer?
Because they call it deeper thinking.
Say that again, Salia.
Celia.
Sorry. Celia.
It's okay.
I caught myself.
It causes us to have a deeper thinking.
Excellent. So how does asking questions lead to deeper thinking, do you think? So Kaylin's talking about the curiosity, right? More questions, as Summer mentions. Good. Reflect on things different. A lot of people, we could say different people accept as truth. Good. You can decide for yourself. Good, right? So this is all tapping into what Russell's going to be talking about, right? So there's something that happens to our minds, right, when we focus on the question rather than just getting the one right answer. Okay, and it's everything you guys are tapping into here, right? We're literally, people talk about being open-minded. Russell's literally talking about freeing the mind, right, from what he calls the tyranny of custom. And that tyranny of custom, right? Customs, we like customs, don't we? Traditions, right? Aren't all those things good? But he's going to talk about them in a very negative way. He's also going to talk about the practical person in a very negative way. And because for him, the practical person is someone who only cares about the material things in their life, right? As long as they have the material needs met, they're fine. They don't need anything else. They don't need to ask any more questions. They don't need to do any more wondering, Kaylin, right? No wondering or imagining. As long as they have, right, enough to live, to survive, right? Maybe even to, right, luxuriate a little bit physically, right? That's all they need. But for Russell, that's not enough to being a human being, right? Just having all of our physical needs met, even to a point of abundance, is not going to make for a meaningful, worthwhile life, right? And so it's that opening, that freeing the mind from the idea that that's the only thing we should be working towards, and asking ourselves what other things are worthwhile. And so it's that opening of the mind, that process where, again, you will become a bigger person if you never decide you know what the answer is, right? So if I expand my mind a little bit, and then I think I've uncovered the right answer, well, my mind got a little bit bigger. But if I never think I've come across the right answer, I'm going to keep exploring multiple possibilities, right? And so the idea is that you become, and I love this line in Russell, it's my favorite. And I hate to say, but it couldn't be more relevant than right now, this world we're living in. But he says that studying philosophy, asking the questions, makes you a citizen of the universe, not of one walled city at war with the rest, right? So again, I hope that resonates with what's going on in the world, where we have a lot of people who are scared of things that they don't understand, whereas philosophy wants you to take a more curious approach to things that are different, the unknown, right? It need not be scary. We ought to actually embrace uncertainty, is what Russell is going to try to convey. So how is that resonating with us? We don't, as human beings, we tend to not like uncertainty, right? Anxiety is like one of the big mental health crises going on right now, along with depression, and they're inextricably linked. So how can we get value from uncertainty when we seem to value certainty so much? What do we think?
I'd say
Good. What's that phrase that, like, the only way out?
live every day.
Yeah, good, right? So there's a sense in which we might think of avoiding the unknown almost as like a type of escapism. Yeah, I think, speaking of the mental health analogs, I think they're one of the benefits. Russell's all about like not needing a tangible benefit to studying philosophy, but I think he actually downplays all of the benefits that there are. And this is something that we'll explore more when we get to Buddhism, because there's tons of empirical data on the benefits of meditation, right? And things like this. That's incredible. Yeah, so we could definitely say that, one of the values in embracing uncertainty is maybe you don't care as much about what other people think, right? Those things become more temporary, fleeting. You don't personalize them as much, maybe. That's an invaluable life skill, in my opinion. Yeah. Okay, so I see some more in the chat. Summer, you can't grow in knowledge if you approach everything thinking that you already know the answer. Exactly, right? So we talked about this a little bit last week, right? Imagine maybe somebody who thinks they've got it all figured out. Is that the kind of person that you tend to want to be? Those people we literally describe them as small, right? And we're not referring to their physical size. And again, I think that's comparative to what Russell's talking about, right? Becoming a bigger person, right? A smaller person. We're talking about your view of the world, right? The view that you carry around with you, right? You either go through the world, maybe like we've been saying, with some blinders on, and honestly, that can be very comfortable for some people, and that's how they, right? Maybe, Ryan, that's how they avoid worrying about what other people think. It's like, I'm just going to live in my bubble, right? But some people say that, no, I still want to understand the world around me, as scary as it is, right? So there's different ways that one could approach that. And so the kind of uncertainty that Russell is advocating for is one where we still have to know what other people think. So we might not want to care what other people think, but we have to know, and we have to wonder why they have those reasons, right? And so as we're going to see, that's going to be especially important when it comes to these religious traditions, right? So one of the philosophical questions, right? And this is an area of philosophy that sort of crosses over all of the subdisciplines we've talked about so far, but that is philosophy of religion, right? And so in philosophy of religion, when we ask questions about God, we can be asking metaphysical questions. We can be asking logical questions. We can be asking axiological questions, or we can be asking epistemological questions, right? So we can ask whether or not God exists, right, as a fact. That would be a metaphysical question. Or we can ask just, are you rational in believing that God exists? Let's say we can't answer the metaphysical question, you know? Let's say we can't know whether or not God exists for sure. Well, maybe you just need to be rational in believing in it. Okay, well, if all I need to do is be rational in believing that God exists, well, then why am I rational in believing that this God exists as opposed to this other God, right? Why do I think that this set of scriptures captures the truth of reality, right? The metaphysics, versus this set of scriptures? Why do I think that this tradition has a correct metaphysical view of the afterlife or the soul or the divine, or versus this tradition, right? So again, it's not which tradition you're choosing that philosophy is going to be ultimately concerned with, but the reasons behind it, right? And we can only get to those reasons by asking the questions, right? People who don't ask questions never need reasons to back up what they say, which is why it's such a red flag when you're not allowed to ask questions, right? Someone who has truly done the work of defending their position with good reasons should have absolutely no problem sharing those reasons with you, right? And encountering all of the possible critiques that you can muster, right? And so this is sort of the odd paradox of doing philosophy and religion. And then, of course, you all have the added benefit of us throwing gender into the mix. We haven't even gotten there yet. Get ready for the controversy, right? But the idea of questioning our religions already is, right, something people take very personally. But given that it's something you care so much about, don't you want to have the best possible reasons for defending those beliefs, right? If I cared about something, I wouldn't want it, being held up on some, very weak stilts of reasons. I would want a really strong foundation, so I knew that those beliefs would hold up against any critique that they came across, right? And so, right, the idea is that we should treat religious beliefs with the respect they deserve and question them, right? So in a lot of, unfortunately, real life situations, questions are not welcome. I actually had a former student who took, not this class, but my world religions class. And they were really excited because we were going to be looking at arguments for God's existence, right, from Christian philosophers. So they were super stoked, and they brought the textbook to their Bible study, and they were ready to show all these arguments for God, and they were asked to leave, right? It didn't matter that they weren't even disagreeing with the tradition. They were supporting it, right? They were going to be showing arguments in favor of a monotheistic Abrahamic conception of God. But the mere fact that they asked the question, the mere fact that they needed an answer or wanted an answer was frowned upon, right? And so this ends up being another discussion that often comes up: faith versus reason, right? So reason means that we're engaging in some sort of rational judgment, which means there are rules or standards, for assessing evidence, okay? Faith is to believe in something without evidence, right? Or in the absence of evidence. But here's the problem. A lot of people defend something else and they call it faith. A lot of people defend what is called dogma, and that is belief in something despite contrary evidence. Okay? So being faithful is not the same as being dogmatic, right? Faith is believing in something because you don't have enough evidence to support it, but you have faith nonetheless. Dogma is to say, well, I actually have a lot of evidence that goes against the belief, and I'm just going to ignore it and keep the belief anyways. Okay. So I want to be very clear that there are no philosophers who would ever support dogmatic belief about anything. Even the most staunch religious scholars are never going to embrace dogmatism, right? That can only lead to problematic beliefs, right? But there are some rather amazing arguments for religious faith in philosophy. But what's interesting is they use reason to back it up, right? But it's not evidence, but they're still using reason to support faith. But so lots of interesting things there. But just know that belief without evidence can be worked with, right? Belief only in the face of contrary evidence is going to be problematic. Questions so far about any of these terms. So hang around if you have any other questions, but otherwise I'll let you all go a few minutes early.